It's honestly a wild idea. All the first year students line up, get called one at a time before the whole student body, and put a hat on their head, who searches their brain to see what character quality they're going to exhibit and grow into for the next 7 years of their lives. Actually, more like the rest of their lives. Not only is this a bit embarrassing for first year students, but it's something that flat out shouldn't happen. Sorting is wrong. And I want to argue it from a few different perspectives, but ultimately I think sorting students into their houses when they are 11 years old does significantly more damage than it does good. So let's talk about it. I know and understand British boarding school. Well, I take that back. I don't really understand it, but I know that your house has significant impact on your school experience growing up. But for these Hogwarts students, I think there is some psychological issue with typing or personality tests for other things, or in this case, sorting the students before they've really been able to develop and think for themselves or come up with any sort of core value. It's a sentiment that Dumbledore even repeats in the book, albeit the way that Dumbledore says it is in the context about how Snape really should have been sorted into Gryffindor rather than Slytherin. But he tells Snape, perhaps we sort too soon. This is also a sentiment that the Hat repeats in one of the songs that it sings in its 1995 hit single, In Order of the Phoenix. I'm not going to sing it to you, I'll spare you, but I will say this. These are a few lines of the song. But this year I'll go further, listen closely to my song. Though condemned I am to split you, still I worry that it's wrong. Though I must fulfill my duty and must quarter every year, still I wonder whether sorting may not bring the end I fear. Oh, know the perils, read the signs, the warnings history shows, for our Hogwarts is in danger from external deadly foes. And we must unite inside her or we'll crumble from within. I have told you, I have warned you. Let the sorting now begin. I think Jim Dale does it with like a lot of tremor or whatever that word is for the last line of that. It's wonderful. Now, again, the Sorting Hat says this because he believes that by sorting students, he's inevitably splitting the kids and pitting them against each other. But it's such a tradition that it can't really do anything else. It makes me think what the original intent for the Sorting Hat actually was. And if Hogwarts should have really been split into 4 separate schools that don't interact at all. But I want to revisit those in a bit. The first reason why I think sorting children at age 11 into the personality trait they're likely to exhibit for the duration of their time at Hogwarts is because of modern psychology. If any of you have taken the Myers-Briggs or the DISC assessment or the MMPI, or perhaps you're into the Enneagram, they're all amazing tools for helping you understand yourself a lot more and figure out who you are so that you can grow. But almost all of these tests have some kind of warning or suggestion that adolescent children shouldn't really take the test. It's a recommendation for a number of reasons, but mostly it's because the kid is still in the developmental phases and is still growing. For children, the focus should be on fostering exploration and growth rather than on categorizing their personality, because their preferences and behaviors are more malleable. The results may not reliably reflect their personality over time. My niece took the Enneagram test, and while I think she kind of fits the number that she's got very well, she's still developing and needs to know that she is more than just that personality or that number, that she can grow and become something different if she wants. When students go to school, they essentially get told they are brave, loyal, smart, or ambitious, and they need to grow in that. For some, it works marvelously, like Neville, who is timid and shy and doesn't really have a ton of bravery in the beginning, maybe small little amounts. And he moves into being one of the bravest characters in the whole series by the end. This is telling for what I think is good for kids to know. That even though at the present they aren't something, like Neville isn't brave, they can grow into that and become that. For others in the series, I think it was detrimental. For a character like Draco, had he been sorted into Gryffindor, I think it would have been a serious redemption moment for him. He would have defined himself by bravery rather than ambition and possibly could have become a good friend of Harry and an ally against Voldemort and stood up to his parents because he knows that he has bravery because the Sorting Hat told him he had bravery. There are no shortage of YouTube videos out there going into the what ifs of any sort of character, What if this character was sorted into this house? What if this character was sorted into that house? And usually their whole personality and arc changes significantly, which should just go to tell the students that they should not get sorted into these houses because it is way too fast. My 4th grade teacher did this to me, and it damaged me irreparably for 15 years. I'm being very dramatic and way too flippant, but it was significant, but it wasn't that detrimental. I got to get over myself. But when I was young, I thought I was really smart. The other kids in my class were smart, but I always thought I was as creative as anyone else in my class, and just as smart as the smartest kid. Now, this is probably wrong, but it was affirmed to me that it was wrong during the report card discussion that I had with my 4th grade teacher. In this meeting, I was devastated that I got 2 C's on my report card. I was embarrassed, and I remember dreading having to tell my parents that I got 2 C's. And I remember when my teacher asked me how I thought I did on my report card, I remember all I wanted to do was cry and cry and cry for embarrassment at getting 2 C's. I knew I was better than that. But she did something simultaneously sweet and something that made me an idiot for the next 15 years of my life. She put her hand on my knee and said, "I think you did great. I think that was the best that you can do." Now, looking back, she was 100% trying to be sweet to a kid that was on the verge of tears and couldn't really hold it in. But I remember in my meeting thinking, maybe I really am a dumb kid, and I shouldn't really do anything different to get any grade better than a C. And so for the rest of elementary school, middle school, and high school, I was a terrible student. It was a constant bane for my parents as they kept telling me I was smarter than this, but I didn't listen. It was in my brain that I was dumb and that I would never be an A student. It wasn't until college where a teacher that I hated, who I thought was a tough teacher and that graded students insanely hard. She was the kind of teacher that never gave an A and would make students work crazy hard for their grades. It wasn't until halfway through my 2nd semester when she stopped me in the hall as she was talking to another professor and said, "Jonathan, you're making valuable contributions in my class, but I think you are significantly smarter than you lead on to believe. And I think you are better than the effort you are putting forth in my class." I will remember that forever because it corrected me. And after that, I never got another C in another class again in college and grad school. Now, this was long-winded, but it goes to show that the things that you say, whether negative or positive, can truly shape a kid into who they are for a long time. Think of the movie Inside Out or Inside Out 2. Riley, although for a short time, had an identity crisis where she almost becomes a totally different person. Now, in some way, this is impossible to stop for a young child, but it's something that I think the Sorting Hat actually encourages by telling a child what personality trait they are going to exhibit and are characterized by. Rather than telling them which house they are in their mind and heart, I think that the Sorting Hat should actually do the opposite. The hat should make it totally random. It's kind of the nature-nurture discussion as well, but imagine if Neville got thrown into Ravenclaw. I could imagine him feeling like a fraud there too. But he really does have a lot of Ravenclaw in him. He becomes a professor at Hogwarts, for God's sake. And imagine if Ron was sorted into Hufflepuff. Would he have grown already more loyal than he was? Would he have left Harry in the forest? I think the Sorting Hat should totally randomize the sorting, and I want to talk about this later. Perhaps I should just have rotations every single year where you're with a new crop of students every year for the next 7 years. I think that would actually do wonders for the student body, but potentially destroy a lot of things as well. I mean, positives and negatives for everything in the story that we could kind of change, to be honest. But not only do I think this messes with the psychology of the students, but I think plot-wise, it does exactly what the Sorting Hat said it would do in Order of the Phoenix. It divides the students and makes sort of this tribalism in the student body. I still cannot believe that all the Slytherin students, every single one of them, were put into the dungeons and not one of them chose to fight for Hogwarts during the Battle of Hogwarts. That is wild to me. And it's something that all Slytherins over the world lament as a bit of lazy writing. There should have been one student other than Slughorn the Professor who is a Slytherin, who should have fought against Voldemort. Even if they choose self-interest, that cannot be the only defining feature they possess. I cannot fathom that this would have been the case had the Sorting Hat been random or there had been no sorting at all. Yes, things move into factions and cliques, but I'm sure there were some Slytherins who didn't fight simply because of peer pressure rather than real desire. And in the negative sense, this also does have positive reasons that Rowling is talked about. I'm a Hufflepuff and insanely proud to be a Hufflepuff. And I love that every single Hufflepuff student who was able to fight stayed behind to fight, because we stayed with the school based out on our loyalty and love to it rather than any sort of bravado. But it goes to show the positive case of this, where the Slytherins were all typecasted into one group, the Hufflepuffs were also typecasted into a positive group. And I'm curious, not every single Hufflepuff probably would have stayed had they been sorted into other houses or sorted randomly. So perhaps the sorting hat should stop sorting into something like ambition, even though that's not a negative thing. And maybe the sorting hat should sort into these other 4 personality traits. I don't really want to give examples, but you can talk about kindness and gentleness and, respect and love. Those should be the house attributes. To be honest, even though it has problems just like Hogwarts, I love the Ilvermorny sorting ceremony, because there's a part where they say each of these 4 houses represent the whole of a wizard or witch or human being. And they say it favors healers, warriors, adventurers, or scholars. And I think it has to do with heart, gut, mind, and mouth, or something like that. And this is probably as bad as Hogwarts, to be honest, but I'm from America and I have pride in my American school and I just think it's the best. So this is totally biased. But getting back to why I think it's wrong as well is it 100% does not give students an equal opportunity. You're telling me that Hufflepuff students, they'll walk into a ministry position where the whole department is Slytherin and there won't be any bias in that hiring process. It's insane to think not. And on top of that, there's clear teacher bias. Slytherins are likely to get a better education in potions than Gryffindors are, because Snape is going to be biased towards Slytherins. And again, this won't be solved in any easy way, to be honest, because teachers always have biases and favor students and go harder on others. I mean, I'm the youngest of 4, and I had teachers specifically tell me that they were grading me harder because I had very bright siblings. And newsflash for you, because of what my 4th grade teacher said, I was not the smartest kid in the world, and I acted like that. I acted like I was not smart. So I never really did too well in any of those classes. And this is minutia. I think this is an argument that isn't that strong, because you're always going to have biases and bad teachers and people who give you preferential treatment. But even reading through the series once, it's astonishing how negative of an opinion most people have of Hufflepuff. And it's not until later when you find out that Hufflepuffs are actually the best. And while, to be honest, this cannot be eradicated by anything that really happens at the school, I just think that the hat is sorting way too early. A decision that happens when the student is 11 has way too significant of an impact on the rest of their lives. And it's not really a decision that they have any say over. It weirdly feels similar to a Gates program at a school. If anyone doesn't know what that is, my elementary school had a program that was Gifted and Talented Education, GATE. And I remember in the 4th grade, the same teacher who said I wasn't smart was the same one who didn't put me in the Gates program. Although I still think I was constantly better at long projects and science fairs and competitions than most other people. I won almost every single science fair or came in second for almost every single science fair because I was just better at going home and doing these projects on my own. I came in second in a speech competition for reciting the poem Sick by Shel Silverstein. I only lost. I am convinced that the teacher thought I missed a line, even though every single one of my 4th grade counterparts followed along when they said I didn't. I will hold on to that animosity for the rest of my life. Kidding, can't you tell? But those Gates programs that happened to my school were the most frustrating thing, because halfway through a period, all the smart kids would just get up and leave for their Gates program, where they didn't even do anything that impressive. They built like some weird toothpick structure. And don't even get me started on architecture. Me and Danny, he also runs the podcast with me and is a part of this channel, both of us were architectural geniuses in the 2nd grade. We take every block in class and build these massive structures with them. I still remember our teacher being so impressed that she went to the other room and got us all the blocks in that class and brought them over, and we built these massive structures. We became so well known in the school that we were actually put into the quarterly school newspaper. I still have the clipping. Me and Danny were builders. We were doers, and we were both incredible at projects. We both sucked at our math times tables, which apparently meant we weren't good enough to be put in the Gates program. And newsflash for you, the person who ran the Gates program was my 4th grade teacher. It is ridiculous. So 15 of us dumb kids would watch the smart kids go and play with toothpicks, And it would just reinforce the idea that the ones who were left in the class were just dumb and not worth it. Even though Gates programs have been proven to be ineffective, and there have even been studies that promote letting anyone into a Gates program. That school should never be exclusive, especially in elementary school, because kids are kids and they're young, and we are using adult standards to judge them by. But we should really be letting each child flourish where they are gifted, because I truly believe each child is gifted and capable of doing some great and incredible things. Putting students into Ravenclaw feels like putting them into a Gates program. This is where the smart kids are, and the rest of us feel dumb. Everyone just needs to watch the play Puffs to find out what Hufflepuffs generally think of themselves. Even though, again, I am so insanely proud of Hufflepuff now, when you're a kid, there's just not a ton of them that value loyalty. Which is maybe why the Sorting Hat says that the rest of the students, the ones that the other 3 founders didn't want, just went to Hufflepuff. Gee, thanks. But in the same way that Gates programs, I think, are more damaging than actually beneficial, so the sorting into smart and not smart houses are insulting for students who are actually really smart. And it's more harmful than beneficial. And this even goes to show why Hufflepuffs value Cedric so much. Because out of everyone in the school, here's this bright shining light from Hufflepuff, this leftover house, and he is the champion of the school. It's such an important moment for Hufflepuff students. On top of all this, it's just diminishing for the students. This is similar to what I was saying before, but personality tests always annoy me to a slight degree. I have found a ton of value for them as I get older, once I know myself more, but I also hate them when I'm older because human nature is significantly more complex than being a collection of letters that tell you everything about your personality. And most personality tests agree with this, and even say this up front, but for the person taking them, they want to be categorized into a certain group, and then they resist growth into all other things. Or perhaps they make crappy decisions because they blame it on their personality. I heard a couple that even got divorced after taking a personality test because they found out their personalities didn't get along. Now, they were probably using that as an excuse because maybe they really didn't get along, but it's still ludicrous. I think every student at Hogwarts is much more complex than a simple personality trait of bravery, ambition, wisdom, or loyalty. Take Harry, for example. Famously got sorted into Gryffindor, but nearly got sorted into Slytherin. Now, most people say that's because of the piece of Voldemort that was inside of him that the Sorting Hat was reading, but let's take that out. Let's say post-book 7, which house does Harry belong in? I still think it's Gryffindor, but I'd say it's also close to Hufflepuff. His loyalty to his friends is remarkable. I don't think he really belongs in Slytherin because he doesn't have a ton of ambitions, but he still does have a few, like every single human being in existence. And he is wise beyond his years, while also being an idiot. Harry could have been sorted into any of the 4 houses. Hermione too. Hermione maybe most of all. And I have a theory that the Sorting Hat actually saw that she could have been into any of the 4 houses and gave her the decision to be either in Ravenclaw or Gryffindor. Because Hermione herself said that she almost got sorted into Ravenclaw. But she is one of the most loyal people in the entire series. And perhaps one of, if not the most ambitious person in the series. She's only a Muggleborn though, which means the whole of Slytherin is just racist then. They are actively sorting kids into a racist house again, which is wild. I'm sure nothing bad will happen to those students. I'm sure they'll be able to break free from the stereotype that we're giving them when they're 11 years old. And I know this is a bit ranty, but they just sort too soon. It's insanely unhealthy. So rather than sort students into houses when they're 11, I think there's a few things that they could do to figure this out. Here's the first suggestion. No first years get sorted. They are all in community dorms or get rotated once a week. It's only after their first year that they get sorted by the Hat. This doesn't really alleviate anything, to be honest. I think it's still a problem for dividing the school, but it does help maybe in getting to know students before they get sorted, or perhaps having the students find their niche. It does perhaps just give the students some kind of feel of autonomy that could save Hogwarts from future lawsuits, where a student can blame the Sorting Hat, but they have some kind of culpability attached to it. I don't really think this is a solution, but it's a potential help. Don't sort students in their first year. Give them until their second. Another solution could be to shed the idea that there is any real meaning behind the house. This would take untold years to actually accomplish this, but that would mean the Sorting Hat would need to stop singing about what each house entails. And there would have to be a concerted effort on behalf of all wizarding Great Britain to not talk about what makes each house unique. It would have to be rewired to just say that there are 4 houses that the students get sorted into, and that the hat is essentially just a formality and a tradition. It should almost be looked at as comedic, because when the students get sorted, and if they know nothing about the tradition of the house for what the founders wanted in the students, then they can be much freer to grow how they desire to grow. And there is still some kind of cross rivalry between the houses, which would be good, but wouldn't be based on anything other than tribalism, which, again, in some degree to that age is fun and good for the students. But this would have to come after the history of the houses was wiped out, which maybe isn't all that great. I think the best suggestion and the thing that will save Hogwarts, and as I suggested before, is that they all just randomly get assigned into a house. The students all know that the sorting is random and they have no say over it. That even if they are with someone that they hate, they need to work out their problems with that student. And the attribute of each house would matter significantly less, as they wouldn't care so much seeing that they're just randomly sorted. To be honest, I think that this would be the best solution for the Hogwarts system at the moment. You don't need to change anything, but just make it random. Students have no say in their houses, and the Sorting Hat just becomes a totally random traditional element. You throw all the names of the students into a hat, and then pick them out to see which person goes where. I could see Ron and Harry getting split up at the beginning and still being fast friends after that. I truly think that this is the best solution for Hogwarts. So I know this essay was long and perhaps just a bit venting about the Hogwarts sorting system being way too early, but it's a deeply flawed system and potentially damaging for students to get typed so early in their life. It doesn't give opportunity to the entire student body, and it can entrap students into a personality trait that might, for better or worse, determine the rest of their life. But I could be totally wrong on all of this. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure you like the video because that does a ton for the video and does a ton for the channel. Make sure you subscribe for more Harry Potter nerdy content. And we have lots of other stuff. We have a podcast that we have called Harry Potter and the First Time Readers. We're going through Lord of the Rings right now. So if you like that kind of content, make sure you subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think. How do we fix the sorting ceremony?